There is a specific kind of quiet that only exists when you are truly alone in a house. Not peaceful quiet. The kind where every small sound has weight. Tonight's stories come from people who were home alone and discovered, too late, that they weren't. The third story is the one I keep coming back to. Not because of what the person saw. Because of what they found written down, something that could only have been written by someone who had been watching them for a very long time. Stay with me. The smell of cigarettes. I moved to Raleigh, North Carolina in the fall of 2019. New job, new apartment, second floor of an older building on Oberlin Road, the kind with thick walls and wood floors that groan when the heat kicks on. I don't smoke. I've never smoked. Neither did my sister, who helped me move in. Neither did my landlord, a retired teacher named Gerald who showed me the unit with a measuring tape still in his shirt pocket. For the first 3 weeks, everything was fine. I worked late most nights. I was doing contract accounting work for a regional logistics firm, and the fiscal quarter end had everyone putting in hours. I'd usually get home around 9 or 9:30, microwave something, watch an episode of whatever, and go to bed. Normal. Unremarkable. The first time I smelled it, I figured it was drifting up from outside. A neighbor on the front stoop. I opened my window and the smell got weaker, which made sense. I didn't think about it. The second time was a Tuesday in late October. I came home just after 9. Locked the door behind me, dropped my bag, and walked to the kitchen to check if I had anything edible. And there it was, stale cigarette smoke, sitting in the air like it had been there for hours. I checked the window. Closed. I checked the bathroom. Nothing. I stood in the center of my living room and just breathed it in, trying to locate where it was strongest. It was strongest near my bedroom closet. I want to be clear about something. I am not a person who spooks easily. I grew up in a loud house, shared a room with 2 brothers, and spent for years living in a university dorm. I am comfortable in close quarters. I am not prone to imagination. I opened the closet. Clothes. Boxes. My spare blanket on the top shelf. Nothing unusual. The smell was still there, but I couldn't find a source. I told myself old buildings breathe, that smoke from years ago gets into the walls and comes out when the temperature changes. That explanation worked for about 2 more weeks. Then I came home on a Wednesday to find my bathroom door closed. I always leave it open. Always. It's a habit so ingrained I couldn't tell you when it started. I just never close interior doors when I'm alone. The door was not just closed. It was latched. I stood in the hallway for a long time. I called my neighbor, Dana, a nurse I'd spoken to a handful of times, and asked if she'd been in my unit for any reason. She hadn't. I asked Gerald. He hadn't entered since I moved in. I pushed open the bathroom door. Empty. Clean. The window above the tub was open about an inch, which I didn't remember doing. Cold air coming in. And faintly, very faintly, the smell of cigarettes. I had the locks changed the next morning. I never found evidence that anyone had been in my apartment. No signs of forced entry, nothing missing, nothing moved that I could prove. The smoke smell came back twice after the rekey, then stopped entirely. But here's the thing I haven't been able to put down. About a month later, I was describing all of this to a coworker, just as a weird story, something to fill conversation. And she asked me to describe the smell more precisely. I said stale. Old. Like someone had been smoking in an enclosed space for a long time. She was quiet for a second. Then she said, and I can still hear her exact tone, she said, that's not what secondhand smoke smells like. That's what someone smells like when they've been smoking for years. That smell is in their clothes. I thought about that bathroom door. I thought about the closet. I haven't found an answer I'm comfortable with. That next story comes from a woman who thought the strange things happening in her house had a simple explanation until she walked her own property line. He left the porch light on. My husband travels for work. Industrial equipment sales, covers a 7-state territory. He's on the road 2 to 3 weeks every month. We've lived in our house outside of Bozeman, Montana for 6 years, and I've done a lot of nights alone. I'm used to it. I have a dog, a large shepherd mix named Cord, and a solid deadbolt, and I sleep fine. This happened in February of last year. Darren, my husband, left on a Monday morning for a week in Oregon. I had a normal Monday, normal Tuesday. On Wednesday I worked from home, which I do 2 days a week. Our house is about 4 miles outside of town, set back from the road, surrounded by a mix of pine and open scrub. In winter, we can go days without seeing a car come down our road. Around 8 that Wednesday evening, I noticed our porch light was on. I want to explain why that was strange. We have the porch light on a motion sensor. It's angled to cover the front steps and the first 15 feet or so of the driveway. It clicks on, stays on for about 90 seconds, then shuts off. In 6 years I have never known it to just stay on. It had been on for at least 20 minutes when I noticed it. I assumed a malfunction. Sensor getting old, maybe something wrong with the timer. I made a mental note to ask Darren about it. The light was off when I went to bed. Thursday was quiet. Friday I had to drive into town and run errands in the morning. I got back around noon. When I pulled into the driveway, Cord, who always meets me at the back door, didn't come. I found him in the master bedroom, which he is technically not allowed in, pressed against the wall under the window, panting. Not barking. Not growling. Just this low, steady pant, and his eyes on the window. I tried to coax him out. He wouldn't move. I looked out the window. Open field, tree line, the old fence we keep meaning to repair. Nothing there. It took me a while to get Cord out of the room. By early afternoon he seemed more or less normal, eating, following me around, asking to go out back. But he wouldn't go past the back gate. He'd stop at the gate, look toward the tree line at the far end of our property, and come back to me. Saturday morning I walked the perimeter of the yard. Montana winter, so the ground near the fence was a mix of hard frost and snow that had crusted over. Along the tree line, I found boot prints. A single set. Coming out of the trees, approaching the fence to within about 10 feet, then stopping. Then the same stride going back in. The prints were not from the past few days. They had partially iced over, they were at least 3 or 4 days old. Which put them at Wednesday. I called the county sheriff's office. A deputy came out, photographed the prints, walked the tree line. He said the prints appeared to be from a single adult male, based on the size. He found nothing else. He said it could be a hunter cutting across the property, someone whose truck broke down on the road, any number of things. He said it in that way people say things when they're not sure they believe them. Darren came home Sunday. That night I told him about the porch light, and he went to look at the sensor. He came back in and stood in the kitchen with a specific look on his face. I asked him what was wrong. He said the sensor was fine. He said it was working exactly the way it was supposed to work. He said someone had been standing in our driveway for 20 minutes on Wednesday night. Some people can point to the moment they realized something was wrong. The woman in this last story had to read about it after the fact. 14 entries. I found the notebook in March of last year. I want to be methodical about this, because the details matter and I've had a year to think about whether I've remembered them correctly. I believe I have. I'm a high school librarian in a suburb of Columbus, Ohio. I'm 34. I live alone in a house I bought 3 years ago, a 1950s ranch on a quiet street in Worthington, the kind of neighborhood where people wave from driveways and leave extra zucchini on your porch in the summer. My nearest neighbor is a retired couple named Bev and Tom. I work long days. I'm home by 4:30 most days, and I spend evenings reading, cooking, running an occasional 3 miles. My life is not dramatic. I want you to understand that. In late February, I noticed my back door was unlocked when I came home. I was almost certain I'd locked it that morning. I am a person of routine, but I couldn't be completely certain. I relocked it and didn't act on it. A week later, I came home to find the small lamp in my office turned on. I live alone. I had not turned it on before leaving. I stood in the office doorway for a long time before I turned it off. I started going through my house more carefully each evening. Checking rooms. Looking for anything shifted, anything wrong. I found nothing. No signs of forced entry. Nothing missing. I told myself the lamp had a loose switch. I told myself the door latch was worn. Then on a Tuesday evening in mid-March, I was moving some boxes in my basement. I'd been reorganizing storage, and I found the notebook behind the water heater. It was a standard composition notebook. Black and white cover, college-ruled. It looked like it was maybe a year old. I assumed it had been left by the previous owners. I opened it. The first entry was dated 11 months earlier, 2 months before I moved in. I stood completely still for a long time. The entries were short. 3 or 4 lines each. They described my house. The view through the kitchen window. The sound of the back gate. The exact time the front porch light came on. And then, once I moved in, they described me. The time I turned my lights off each night. What I did on Sunday mornings. The name of the show I watched on Tuesday evenings, which they had apparently identified from the sound through the window. The description was patient. Precise. Not violent. That's what I keep coming back to, because I think I expected something violent. But it wasn't. It was just observational. Clinical. The way someone writes field notes. There were 14 entries total. The last one was dated 3 weeks before I found the notebook. It was the shortest entry in the book. 4 words and then a sentence I'm not going to repeat in full. The 4 words were, "She hasn't noticed yet." I called the police. 2 officers came and took the notebook. They fingerprinted the basement. They told me, gently, that composition notebooks are common, the dates could be fabricated, this may be something a previous occupant left behind as a disturbed, their word, journal of some kind. They were not dismissive. They followed up twice. Nothing came of it. I still live in the house. I've had a security system installed, cameras on every exterior wall, new locks on every door and window. Bev from next door told me in passing, about a month after everything happened, that she'd noticed a car parked at the end of my street a few times over the winter. Just sitting. She hadn't thought anything of it. I asked her to describe it. She gave me a color. A general shape. Nothing useful. Then she said, and she was not trying to frighten me, she was just making conversation, she said it was always gone by morning. And she'd only ever noticed it when my lights were still on. I don't know what the last sentence in that notebook said. But I think about it every time I come home. 3 people. 3 ordinary homes. Nothing that can be fully explained. What stays with me about all of them, the smoke smell in the closed bathroom, the boot prints iced over in the snow, those 14 notebook entries, is how routine everything seemed right up until it wasn't. The horror isn't the moment. It's the retroactive understanding that it had already been happening for a long time. I want to ask you something directly. Have you ever come home and felt, not imagined, felt, that something in your space had shifted? That the air was different, or something was not where you left it? Leave it in the comments. Be specific. I read every one. New stories arrive every day. Subscribe if you want them. Lock your doors tonight. And try not to think about how long someone would have to watch you to know when you forget.